Good evening, everyone. Welcome to St. Mark's, and I'm getting sort of tired of my joke about a warm welcome. This is a warmer welcome than we had planned because our air conditioning unit is struggling with its identity at the moment, and so okay, so this is the first lecture of the 2017 series. It's a real privilege for me to welcome David Archambault II here this evening, the president of the Standing Rock tribe in the Dakotas. David is an extraordinary guy. I don't know about you, but I was very impressed by this man during the whole saga of the Dakota Access Pipeline struggle, providing a very articulate and clear explanation of what was going on, providing great leadership, pulling people together. And even if at times he got severely criticized and some people didn't like what he was doing, I felt as though he stood strong and was very clear about what the godly way, the prayerful way was to proceed in a very difficult situation. Well, you don't want to hear me talking about David Archambault. Dave, please come on up and speak to us.
Thank you. He wasn't kidding when he said it was warm up here. Usually I start sweating because I get nervous, but I think it's different. It's like, well, I'm honored to be here. I want to thank you for the invite. And I was looking at the list of presenters, and that's pretty powerful. So it is truly an honor for me. I have different ways to tell our story, and sometimes I had to put it together in a PowerPoint presentation or a slideshow so then I stay on track. But several times I had to just tell the story. So that's what I'm gonna try to do today. And usually what I do is I talk about the past. Why is it that we are in a fight against the federal government, a fight against oil industry, a fight against the Army Corps of Engineers? Why is it that Standing Rock is fighting them? To truly understand, we have to go through the past, and to understand the past, it's a way to honor my ancestors. Then I'll kind of talk about what present situation is, and then where we can go for the future. So it's the past, present, future. I'll try to tie all together. Like Alan said, I'm the chairman of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. Standing Rock is located in North Dakota and South Dakota. It straddles the state line. It's south central North Dakota, north central South Dakota. We have approximately 8,000 people that live within the Standing Rock boundaries. About 6,000 are members of my tribe. My tribe has about 15,000 members total, but only 6,000 live on Standing Rock. Standing Rock is a result of several wrongs that took place throughout history. And so when I go back into the past, I have to start in the 1400s. And if we take a look at what happened in the 1400s, there were two things happening. One, you have kingdoms, and you have churches. So these two things were apart, but then they came together. And what the reason for coming together was for wealth. And in the 1400s, that's the most important thing. That I don't even bathe with this stuff here. So in the 1400s, people wanted to leave that where I call it the state, which is the government, marrying the churches and for wealth. And when that came together, it forced people out. And there was a thing that was called doctrine of discovery. And that has a significant impact on me and this country. It's the foundation of the federal judicial system. And I'll explain, but what the doctrine of discovery was, it had these sacred documents, these holy documents called papal bulls. And the papal bulls legitimized, legalized the dominance of one race over another race. So, and this was from the Roman Catholic Church, and I'm not saying the church is bad, because what I know today is that if Jesus was here, he would say, it's not right to dominate over one race. No, one race should never dominate over another race. So it's not the church, but it was because these two things came together that created the legitimizing of dominance, Christian dominion. So I have to start there, because I have to ask myself, how did it come to where we, as the original occupants of these lands that we're on, are left on Standing Rock with little bit, the little that we have? How is that? And it goes back to the doctrine of discovery. So in 1823, there was a court case. It was Johnson versus McIntosh. And Johnson versus McIntosh, there's a disagreement between two parties. One saying, I own this land. The state gave it to me. The government gave it to me. And the other one saying, I own this land. I've been here from the very beginning. My ancestors lived here. This is my land. I'm the original occupant. So this disagreement, they go to court. Chief Justice Marshall has to rule on it. When he rules on it, he says, the owner of the land is the one who the state gave it to. And he says, because the original occupants are less than human. They are like the plants or the trees or the deer or whatever else was there. So the title goes here. And that became the foundation of the federal judicial system when it came to property. So I start there, and that's way back. Now when I go to, how did we get the land base? In 1784, the federal government went around and said, where are the Indians at? Where's their territory? And if you look at the north central part of the United States, that was the Great Sioux Nation. That's where we came from. And it encompassed about 6 different states. It was a huge territory. And when the Westerners start migrating to the West, this happens about early 1800s, the migration starts coming. Our tribes, there's several of the Great Sioux Nation is made up of several tribes, but the Yanktonais were the furthest by Wisconsin, and they ran into the Westerners. In 1812, there was a war, and this war was with the Americas versus the British, and they're going at it, while the Yanktonais, the Great Sioux Nation, joined forces with the British. So in 1815, America says, we don't want to fight. We don't want to fight the Great Sioux Nation. So we're going to enter into a treaty. It's a peace treaty. So it's a treaty to me is like a contract, government to government. It's a contract, it's an agreement. But it wasn't territory, it wasn't land. It was to put the Great Sioux Nation under the protection of Americas, to join together. In 1825 was the next treaty. And that one was a land treaty. So we start defining territory. And our territory went all the way over to Wisconsin and all the way over to Montana and Wyoming. It was a huge tract of land. At that time, there was civil wars taking place. And that's where American history starts to pick up, the civil wars. But we forget about, there's a period from 1825 to 1850s, that we don't talk about, and that's the tribes. Until 1860s, that became the Indian Wars, and that's because the civil wars were wrapping up. And the forces that were fighting in the civil wars then moved to the plains, moved out to the Great Plains. So now we have another, there's more confrontations, more conflicts, so we have to enter into another treaty, a land-based treaty. So we entered into we call it the Horse Creek Treaty, or sometimes they call it the Fort Laramie Treaty in 1851. Fort Laramie Treaty was, encompassed about 6 different states, 5 states, I think, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska, and Montana. So those 5 states, and it was 60 million acres. And that was for the Great Sioux Nation. From 1851 to 1868, there was a conflict with the Bozeman Trail. Bozeman Trail, there was a trail that cut through the treaty lands and ended up in Montana. And the reason why they're going to Montana is because there's gold in Montana. So now we're having more conflicts, and that's where the Indian Wars started. And there might be a paragraph or a page that talks about Indian Wars in our history books, but this was something that was happening for decades, from the 50s to the 1870s. So one of the most famous war leaders at that time was Red Cloud. Red Cloud didn't want them crossing through the treaty lands, and that Bozeman Trail was like our most precious homelands. It was where we hunted the buffalo and our elk. It was between the Black Hills and between the Rocky Mountains. It was some of the most beautiful, lush land. So Red Cloud stood up and he started fighting. They closed the Bozeman Trail, and then they came up with another treaty, Fort Laramie Treaty, 1868 treaty. When they entered into this treaty, it reduced some of the lands. So the tribe said, no more will we cede any more lands. We're not going to cede any more lands unless you get 3/4 of all the adult males to agree. So 3/4 of the adult males have to agree before any more lands are taken from the Great Sioux Nation. There's gold is discovered in the Black Hills in 1874. So because of gold, we don't enter into any more treaties. It becomes an act of Congress. Congress says, from now on, this is your land, and it was only South Dakota and a little bit of North Dakota with the Black Hills carved out of it. Now, when Alan was talking about spirituality with Native Americans, for the Great Sioux Nation, our origin stories come from the Black Hills. There's a place called Wind Cave, and the first man to come out and see what's on the surface, we were cave livers, cave dwellers. When he came out, he asked the Creator if he can change him into something to help his people, because there's nothing there. So they changed him into the buffalo. This is our creation story. When they changed him into buffalo, now we have the same DNA as the buffalo. And our people follow the buffalo. The buffalo became everything to us. It became our economy. It was our shelter, our clothing, our tools, our food, anything and everything we ever needed. That's what this man gave himself for others, so that we could come out and live. Not only that, the buffalo went certain routes. The buffalo, we say, follow the stars. And it's the origin of our belief system. In April, there's the highest peak in the Black Hills. It's called Black Elk's Peak. It was formerly called Harney Peak. at that highest peak, we would offer to the Creator and to the Wakias. We would ask them to come. We would welcome them home. Every spring, we'd welcome the Wakias. Wakias are the thunder beings, the thunders. But when we ask them to come, we say, come because they bring water, they bring life. But have pity on us. 28 days after that, and 28 days is significant. There's 28 days in a woman's womb. There's 28 ribs on a buffalo. So every 28 days, we follow the buffalo to the next spot, and it was a place called Peshla. Peshla is like a bald spot, and this is in the Black Hills. And it's where animals congregate. So we would make offerings to animals and thank them for being there for us. 28 days after that, we would go to Bear Butte. Bear Butte was a place where we would go and we would vision quest, we call Hamblecha. 28 days after that, we would go to Greyhorn Butte, our Devil's Tower, and we would have our Wewangwachi, our sun dance. So the buffalo led us throughout our summer, and the things that happen here happen up there. And it's so simple, the way our beliefs is there's four things that are sources of life. It's Mother Earth, the sun, air, and water. Without one of those, we will not live. So all four of those are used with our ceremonies and when we pray. And if we were to look out into the prairie, and we'll say Maza Shkashka, that Daku Shkashka, it's moving. Whatever's there is moving. And if it moves, it has a soul. Or we say Nari, it has something inside. And if it has something inside, then we are related to it. And if we're related to it, we can communicate with it. And we want to protect it. So whatever it is, so it could be grass you see moving, it could be trees, it could be birds, it could be deer, it could be animals, it could be anything. If it has a Nari, it's a relative. And it's, when we say Tukashla, to interpret it, that means we would say God, but our grandfather, our Wankantanka, the great mystery. But that's everything. It's from the center of the earth to the surface to the universe. Everything around us and that relationship that we have. So it's about relationships. So the Black Hills is the core of that. In 1877, the federal government cut that out, said you no longer can go into the Black Hills. 1889, another act came, Allotment Act, and they put us on the current day reservations. There's 13 different tribes on current day reservations. And from 1889 to 1910, another act. There was the Allotment Act, or the Dawes Act, the Curtis Act, and the Burke Act. Even within the reservations, we weren't competent enough, according to the government, to own land. So the steward of it was the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They were trusted to manage it for us. So in order for us to get an allotment, the BIA agent had to tell us that we were, decide whether or not we were competent enough. And a lot of it was, can you speak English? Do you understand what it means? We were very intelligent. We just didn't speak the same language. So 1910, that was going on. Now, keep in mind that every time there's an act of Congress, we don't have say. We're not even humans. We're not even citizens of this country, but this government is deciding what's best for us. It isn't until 1920, we're fighting in 1914, 1916, we're fighting in World War I. It's our members who are represented in this nation, just a few years before, 1864, we fought in the Battle of Little Bighorn when General Custer went down. 1864 isn't that far away from 1914. The same last names that fought in that against the United States and defeated the United States are fighting alongside the United States in 1914. And we're not even citizens. It's not until 1924. So there's a continued taking. So the 60 million acres that were there, 1944 was reduced to 1.3 million acres for my tribe. And in 1944, there was another taking. It was called the Pick-Sloan Act. Pick-Sloan is the building of dams, 7 dams strategically placed in the United States to create the largest dam system in America, in the world. And the first dam was built in Fort Peck, and it took land from the Fort Peck tribe. Second dam was built by 3 affiliated tribes. Garrison took the 3 affiliated tribes. Every place that this dam was placed, there were 7 of them. The Standing Rock Sioux tribe, Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, the Lower Brule Sioux tribe, Crow Creek Sioux tribe, Yankton Sioux tribe. Our lands were flooded. This was in 54. 58, we were relocated from the river bottom to the top. So this isn't that far away. And why did we need these dams? For recreation and for energy independence, hydroelectricity. So now we come to a time where we see oil development. That's kind of like the past. I help you understand like all the takings that took place and the impact that it had. And so we have this in North Dakota, there's this Bakken shale, Bakken play they call it. In the United States, in 2006, we had the one of the highest times unemployment rate. But in North Dakota, if you carve out the tribes that live in North Dakota, the unemployment rate was 2.8%. Lowest unemployment rate. People were coming to North Dakota and they were exploring. They were taking oil. At that time, in 2007, we said we didn't want any pipelines to cross our ancestral lands. So ancestral lands, we could go back to 1784, we could go back to 1851, we go back to 1868, we could go back. Our treaty lands, our ancestral lands, we don't want oil pipelines crossing them because what we saw in North Dakota was unregulated pipelines breaking. We saw the contamination and the destruction that was taking place to Mother Earth, Unchi Maka. So we said, we don't want that. In 2012, there were people coming to Standing Rock saying, you guys might have oil. We want to explore. There's this technology called fracking. We want to frack your land. And our tribe said, we don't want fracking. We don't want pipelines and we don't want fracking. So we passed a moratorium, a resolution saying no fracking. 2013, I become the chairman. I get to be the chairman. So President Barack Obama at that time was dealing with this KXL pipeline. It was a pipeline coming from the Canadian tar sands, crossing through our treaty lands and taking it down to oil down to Illinois, Canadian tar sand oil to Illinois. In 2013, I got an opportunity to meet with Obama, the president, and I asked him, don't sign it. 2014, we get a notice that they're building Dakota Access Pipeline. So immediately we start the conversation saying, we need to be consulted. There needs to be consultation, government-to-government consultation. The Corps of Engineers has their definition of consultation, and we have our definition of consultation. So they say this is consultation when we pick up a phone and call you. So we had 389 correspondences with the Corps of Engineers, and the judge, Federal Judge Boasberg, said that's consultation. We filed an injunction, and he said, you guys had been consulted. And we disagree with that. We still disagree with that today. Consultation has to change. No longer can we agree to sit down, because it feels like every time we sit down to consult, we are already agreeing to the project. Our input is not, it's consultation. Is it consultation when somebody tells you what they're going to do? So if I tell Alan I'm gonna sock you, and he says, I don't want to be socked, and I sock him anyway, and he says, I'm gonna take you to court. Why? Because you socked me, but I consulted with you. So that's what we face with all. That's like a general analogy, but that was in 2014. 2015, we got a construction notice that they're going to start building this pipeline. And the whole year we went back and forth arguing. 2016, there was a draft EA. January 2016, there's a draft EA, environmental assessment. And in this EA, Standing Rock was not mentioned, not once. Even though we have a year of 389 correspondences, the EA had no reflection of Standing Rock. This pipeline was 500 feet away from our boundary, crossing the Missouri River, and if anything was to happen, who's the first to be impacted? It's going to be our tribe. So for them to deliberately keep us out, there's other counties and other towns that were identified. So we said we can't do this. So the first thing we did, there's three approaches that we took. The first approach was we have to go to DC. We have to take a political approach. We have to lobby. We have to show what's going on. So we went to met with all of our senators. We met with the administration. We met with the Army, the U.S. Army, Civil Works. We met with Environmental Protection Agency. We met with Advisory Council of Historic Preservation. We met with whoever would listen to us. We tried to meet with the White House. And we just kept at it. We kept saying, you gotta see what's happening. And the same history I just shared with you is the same history I shared with them. And every time we met, and I said, this is not right, and I'll tell you why. Because when I asked the Corps of Engineers, when I asked the company, why do you need this pipeline? So there's three reasons why we need this: energy independence, economic development, and national security. So I said, well, if you're doing this again to us, keep in mind that for national security, you took our Black Hills because you wanted gold, and gold is used to back our currency. For economic development, you took our lands and you continue to take our lands. In North Dakota, South Dakota, before oil, the number one economic driver, the economy was driven off of agriculture. So our lands were continuing to take, all the best farmlands, even within our boundaries, are taken for economic development. And the third thing was for energy independence. We need this pipeline for energy independence. Well, you took our best river bottom lands so you can create hydropower for energy independence, and we still pay that cost today. Yet you benefit. Everybody else benefits. Whatever infrastructure project there is, we pay the cost, and you benefit. And so when we go back and we look at the infrastructure projects in the Great Sioux Nation and the Great Plains, when early 1900s, Lewis and Clark's coming through. They said there's 70 million buffalo that roam the plains. 70 million. It's like the Black Sea. There's countless miles. As far as you can see, it's unbelievable. 1889, there's less than 100. One infrastructure project helped almost exterminate the whole species, and that was a railroad. We didn't say we wanted a railroad, but what this railroad did was people from the west can come right on the railroad and shoot buffalo. They could stand on the railroad, on the cars, and just shoot the buffalo. There was so much buffalo, dead buffalo laying everywhere. There's a picture in the North Dakota Museum. They had to send crews out to pick up the bones, the buffalo skulls. There's a mountain of buffalo skulls, a picture with a man standing on top of it, of buffalo skulls. There's mountains of hides, buffalo hides. So that one infrastructure project changed our life, changed our economy, changed who we are. That was the railroad track. If we look at dams, that changed our life. If we look at telephones, our roads, every infrastructure project had an impact on who we are as the original occupants of these lands. So here comes another one, a pipeline. That was my question. What impact is it going to have on us? We did an assessment, an environmental assessment. I can do assessment. I'll look outside and I'll tell you it's a lot cooler out there than it is in here. But and that's basically all they did. It's not going to impact you. There's another way to assess. It's called the environmental impact statement. And it takes a more in-depth look at what happens to the species, what happens to the people, what happens to the community, what happens. But there's something happening here. You have, again, the state, and now it's not the church, but it's the corporations, the corporate world coming together. You have company, corporate world, and the government coming together. And when that happens, people want to move out. We saw this happen in the past. That's what's happening again. Corporate world is starting to create the laws. And I'm not trying to debate anybody or trying to argue anyone. I'm just saying you have the Koch brothers, for example. They own Congress. Who creates the laws? Who facilitates accessibility to resources? Now you have a marriage. So these are the things that when we start digging in. And the reason why I say this is because I have representatives in my state, North Dakota. You got to listen to me. Senator Heidkamp, Democrat. She supports the pipeline. It's going to bring economic development to the state. Senator Hoeven, he has interest in oil wells. Congressman Kramer, all our representatives are tied into corporate world. And when that happens, it's not public interest that they're serving. So I have to bring these points out, and I have to say, what can we do different? We have to get different representatives. So now we have something that we all, where I'm at, my tribe, disagree with. We went politically, we filed a lawsuit legally. From July 16 all the way down to today, we're still in court. We filed a summary judgment, and in our summary judgment, there was 5 arguments. 3 of them, the Judge Boldberg ruled in our favor, and 1, environmental justice. 2 was our original treaty and hunting rights. And the 3rd one was our technical experts were not considered. our information. So technical information that we had provided was not considered by the Corps. So those three things were ruled in our favor. We had to go back in briefs, and in our brief we said we need to stop this pipeline. The pipeline went through. We actually got it stopped for a moment when in the last administration, and then when President Trump came in, he signed a presidential memorandum to approve of this pipeline, and it went good, and then it went bad right away after the new president came in. So the political part of it worked up until the new administration came in. Legal part, I'm not sure. I didn't think we'd get any ruling in our favor based off of the history, based off of Johnson versus McIntosh, but there was something that came out, and now the remand, or how do you fix it? We had to go back and forth with briefs, and today where we're at is we're waiting for the judge. Our argument is it's going to impact our life. The Corps is saying there's not going to be a change. Leave the pipe alone, let the oil flow. Let the oil flow. In 2013, there was a boom taking place in Canada, in North Dakota. The price of oil was $100 per barrel. It fluctuated $125 to $100 per barrel. The expansion was blowing up. The capacity to transport oil was not there. So what they did was they projected, what is it that we're going to need? One was KXL pipeline. Two was Dakota Access Pipeline. Dakota Access Pipeline was going to transport 550,000 barrels of crude oil per day. And there's already existing infrastructure. There's already pipelines. So another way to transport it is through trucking. Another way is to transport it is through train systems. So there was a projection that we need to transport 5 million barrels per day. In 2014, the price of oil dropped from $100 per barrel to $30 per barrel. The capacity isn't needed, but the projections for this pipeline are still in, and they're still building out this pipeline. And they think and they believe that this pipeline is going to bring the oil boom back. Today, we can transport 2.8 million barrels per day with the Dakota Access Pipeline. Today, we're producing 900,000 barrels per day. The pipeline isn't necessary. It isn't needed. The projections for this pipeline, the economies, the basis for this pipeline was done in 2013 when there was a boom. And the companies are closing shop up in North Dakota. They're high-risk companies. So I never understood why they continue to push this pipeline, because it's not really needed. And we continue to be ignored. The last area that was, so we did it with political, and we did it with legal, trying to stop this pipeline. The third area that we took an approach was initiated by our youth. Our youth said, we don't want oil in our water. So they started a run. They ran from a small community named Wakpala to Mobridge over the river. And then they ran from Cannonball, North Dakota to Omaha. And then they ran from Cannonball, North Dakota to Washington, D.C. And they delivered a letter, they delivered petitions, and our kids started speaking up. And then we had a camp start up. So I always call this on the ground, but it's kind of like everything kind of coming together. And it was a movement that began April 2016. And even though there's not a camp there today, the movement is still going. And we're not going to know what the result of this movement is until maybe I'm not even here. It's going to be the result. We're going to look back. Their kids are going to look back and say, what happened? How did something change? It was a movement that began. And it was a camp. And it was one of the most powerful things that I had ever experienced, to see tribes from across the world come to Standing Rock. We had over 10,000 people at one time. We had, when it first started, it was pretty amazing. I remember I went to the camp, and this young lady came up to me and she said, you know, I was watching on my phone what is going on, and I told my kids, get your stuff, we're going. That was 2 days ago. She was from California. And she was at the camp, and then she said, I can't believe I'm here. And there was a lot of things that were happening. So in our culture, we have this prophecy. It's called the seventh generation. The first generation, we lived in kind of like a state of euphoria, where we had this connection and this relationship and this balance with this planet, with our universe, with the center of the earth. We had this, it was, and all the teachings that were passed down, we were told, you know, this is, you need wisdom, generosity, courage, bravery, fortitude, humility, love, all of these values. These are taught to us. They're said to us. But to actually experience what they mean, that's what happened at the camp. And that first generation starts here, and they said we're going to lose a lot of it. We're going to drop below this euphoria line, and we're going to lose a lot of it, not until the seventh generation. And then when the seventh generation comes, we're going to learn everything again. And by the 14th generation, we're going to know more than what the first generation knew. So that's a prophecy. And to me, my mind is kind of starting to go crazy, because when people are coming, how do you deal with all of it? And so I had to try to conceptualize, I had to try to put things together, thoughts, and here these curves start coming. Another one was, we've been going on this line for the past 200 years, and all of a sudden something happened, and now we got a bump. And in this short period of time, the Creator showed us how it was to have humility, to be generous. It was a liberation that happened. For 200 years, we've been oppressed for so long, suppressed. And then when we went to the camp, you were free. You were liberated. You were empowered. You had worth. It was amazing. And every tribe that came, they brought their ceremonies, they brought their songs, they brought their stories. And that was like probably the most sacred, powerful thing that you can be a part of. What it was unity, and there was 4 basic rules. No violence, no weapons, no alcohol, no drugs. You could do that, and we're coming in peace and with prayer. So you have to make a choice. How are we going to fight this? How are we going to fight this pipeline on the ground? Are we going to use war, or are we going to use peace? And what's your target? What are you going to focus on? What's the one thing that you want to do? We wanted to protect that water for the future generations, so it was looking after our future, but we're honoring our past by protecting our sacred places. That's our target. And whenever you have a target, this is what caused me problems. You have distractions. You have law enforcement, you have dogs that are biting people, you have mace, you have concussion grenades, you have front lines, you have all these distractions. And every time something pops up, you have to run over there and try to address it. But as long as you come back to where you are. So the most powerful time was when we were united and when we were together with prayer. Something changed, and it was when money came involved. Crowdfunding, social media has a way to raise money now. So when everybody was coming, they were saying, how can help? What can I do? But after money became the issue, it became about, where do I get mine? How do I get mine? And when that came into play, we saw a shift, and we start going down, and we start seeing division. Right now, if I put these two graphs together, there's one that looks like a bell shape, and the other one that looks like a parabola. There's an intersection, this bell shape, where we start dividing, and then there's the parabola is going up. That's where we're at today. We have to decide, we have to make a choice whether or not we're going to continue to help the future generations and stay united. Are we going to allow for the division? So that's looking into the future again. What are we going to do for the future? We're going to continue. What I saw was different aspects. There was people that were there to stand up. Now there's tribes that are willing and ready to move. So we have to start looking at how can we facilitate and help. How can we facilitate and stay united? That's the decision and choice. And that's the direction that I want to go. When there was all this turmoil, conflict, and I questioned myself all the time. I question, am I doing the right thing? Am I making a difference? Is this what I'm supposed to do? And when you question yourself all the time, you have to turn to the Creator, turn to God, turn to prayer. But even then, I was still having a hard time, and so was my wife. My wife was having a hard time because there was imploding taking place. Implosion. People at the camp we had differences, opinions, disagreements, and it was forcing me to ask myself. So we went through this exercise, and I'll just tell this one story real quick. Before that, when all this was happening, I was in my bed, and I was laying there, and I think I fell asleep. And all of a sudden, I heard this someone at the window, and they were saying, Dave, they're out here. They're waiting. And I think I was sleeping, but I could see, this was early on when the camp, I could see hundreds of people outside of my window. And they're waiting for you. And then the next night, I went to sleep, and I heard something again. But it was inside the house. And they're saying, Dave, we're here. You coming? But it was like all of those that have gone before us came, and they're saying, let's go. It's time now. So when you question yourself whether you're doing the right thing or not, I know that with my beliefs, with my spirituality, that we had our ancestors watching over us. And we're really fortunate that nobody got hurt. And that was my priority, was to make sure we had people that didn't lose their lives. When we're struggling, how do we stay focused on that target? My wife we couldn't sleep. We were sitting there, and so we went through this exercise. We asked ourselves, who did you know when you were 5 years old? Said my mom. How about you? She said her mom. Who do you know when you're from 5 to 10? And we start naming. We wrote these names down. Who did you know when you're 15? Who did you know when you're 18? When you graduated? Who did you know when you're in your early 20s? Who did you know? So we had this list of people, and there was my mom and my dad, of course, and then I had some aunts and some uncles, and I had friends. My wife had her basketball coach. all of these people were our mentors. All of these people are the ones that the Creator put in our path, put in front of us at one time in our life, that helped shape us and make us who the people we are. After we get this list, then I said, if any one of these people were in our shoes, would they have done the same thing? And we say, yeah, because they're the ones who shaped us. They're the ones who made us who we are. So I'm driving to work, and I'm still having a hard time. I still don't believe it. I'm driving to work, and I call to the Creator, call to God. I say, let me know, am I doing the right thing? Tell me, give me a sign, because it's hard when you have people that are in disagreement with you about every step you have to take, and everything you say, everything you do. So I get to work, and then this letter is on my desk. I open it up, and it's my aunt, Sister Marie Treese. She was a nun. She knew 7 different languages. She studied in Rome. Sister Marie Treese, Archambault, she said, it was an obituary. So I said, where did this come from? And we were getting a lot of mail. Where did this come from? And my secretary said, I don't know. It was laying with all the other mail. So then I said, and I had her picture on there. So I put it in my drawer. And here she came back in about 10 minutes later. She had the letter that came with it, with the obituary. And it said, I found this picture in Arvada, Colorado, and I found her obituary. I researched her on Ancestry.com and found out who her family were, and I sent them the copy of the picture, but they didn't want it. So I did some more research, and I wanted to find her home, and I found your address. I found she was a member of your tribe. So I'm hoping that maybe a niece or a nephew or somebody in her family will find value in this. By the way, I'm sorry for what President Trump did. So at that time, I was sitting there, and my sister was one of the most kindest, precious people, my sister Marie Treese, most kindest, precious person that I could ever, and she was on my list. That sign came to me when I needed it the most. So I know that the Creator was giving me that sign that I needed to say that, you're doing the right thing. It's okay. Things happen the way they're supposed to happen. And it will all shake out and all settle in the future. What do we do moving forward? I get this question all the time. I get 2 questions. One is, how are you doing? But sometimes it's like, how are you doing? I say, I'm fine. I know who I am. I know my foundation. I know my family. I'll be all right. But then they'll say, well, how can I help? I'll say, all you got to do is follow your heart. Your heart will tell you what to do if you want to help. For us, what I would want to do is I want to memorialize this moment, because it was special at Standing Rock. We did stand up. Regardless of the outcome, we're still in court, but regardless of the outcome, never has that many tribes come together. That is huge. Never have we felt that empowerment. Never have we been liberated in over 200 years. Regardless of the outcome, there's some good things that happen. So we need to memorialize this. We need to, this is what I want to do. I sent a message to the Pope. So this Pope is somebody who I think would revoke the papal bulls because he rides a Harley. I will ask if we can revoke those papal bulls, because that is the foundation of the judicial system. And once that's pulled out, then what can the court say then? And we go back to every court case. So we need to change what consultation means. No more can we say consultation. No more can I sock you and tell you I'm going to sock you. We need to say consent. Ellen, will you give me consent to sock you? Nope. Okay, I won't sock you then. I don't hit people anymore. I'm just using that as an analogy, Ellen. Consent rather than consultation. And all around the world, people are talking about consent with the indigenous peoples, indigenous tribes. We need to start paying attention to what we're doing. We're the one who creates the problem. What is it that we buy? What is it that we consume, eat? The rainforests are disappearing. Ice caps are melting. And I'm not getting into a climate change debate or anything. I'm just saying these are facts. The globe is starting to heat up. And when it heats up, ice caps melt. Glaciers are disappearing. Rainforests are disappearing because we cut them down for cattle or for palm oil. Aquifers are disappearing. I don't even know why I'm telling you guys this. You're in California. These things are happening and they're real. And we're the cause. We have to change our behavior. We change our behavior, or we're not going to leave anything. So I always think about this. My dad did everything he can do so I have a better life. His mom did everything he can do so he can have a better life. Our great-grandparents did everything that they could do so that we can have better lives. We should be doing the same instead of trying to consume everything. What are we going to leave behind for those that are not even born yet? That's who we have to start thinking about. And that's how I think, as someone in my position, I can make decisions and I can sleep at night because my decisions are based off of the future. I can't sleep at night if I'm only going to make a decision for one. I have to make a decision for those that aren't even here yet. We started a Indian collective. It's called NDN Collective, and we're in the formation stages of it. We're trying to match the different arms, different ways to help Indian country. There's a guy named Nick Tilson out of Thunder Valley who is thinking about this, and after seeing everything that happened, there's tribes in different stages. Some of them want to develop. Some of them are developed. Some of them want to stand up for their rights. Some of them want to start a financial institution. So there's different ways that we can touch and help the different tribes that they're at. So that's what I like to work on, and that way we can assure a future. But that's just in the conception stage right now. So I hope I covered the past, and I hope I didn't offend anybody. It's not meant to offend anyone. It's meant to share where I came from and why we stood up. I shared the present. Most of the present that I shared was about kind of like the camp. And then the future, what is it that we have to do next? So I'm done. If you want to ask questions, I don't know how much time we have.
Okay, questions? Whoa, questions are, okay, I'll take one here. If you can be as concise as possible. Concise.
First of all, Wopilatanka. I think what's happened at Standing Rock has energized a lot of people. Good friend of mine is a Navajo who's writing a book with another man who's Korean, Truth Be Told, and it's all about the doctrine of discovery, Mark Charles. He's Navajo, but he's obviously trying to walk in beauty, and I think what happened at Standing Rock has energized and informed a lot of people, not just in that way, but things like the Natural Resources Defense Council and things like that. So are you have any communication with people like Mark Charles or any of the people that are trying to get this truth and conciliation group going?
We have the Yakima tribe and the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. I'm trying to think of his name, Stephen. I can't think of his name right now, but we've been, we signed a proclamation, and right now everything's been kind of on hold for me. I got elected in 2013. My election's coming up, 2017, October. My term is done. I am a candidate, but I haven't been able, so whether or not I get in, I'm still gonna work with the Yakima tribe and see where we can bring out education on the doctrine of discovery and where we can go from there. So we are working with different tribes and different individuals and this isn't anything new. This has been going on for a while.
My question is your education typical of that the youth receive on your reservation?
So I grew up on Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. It's in South Dakota. And then my dad moved to Bismarck, North Dakota. When he moved up there, I moved to Standing Rock with my aunt. So I've been educated with the systems on the reservation. And I think I've been blessed because I have parents, two parents. And I try to do the same for my kids. So I have a choice. The grass is always greener somewhere else. I graduated from Standing Rock High School. The dropout rate is 50%. I graduated from there, and I'm proud to say that I did. I went on to get my college degree. I got a bachelor's at North Dakota State and a master's at the University of Mary in Bismarck, North Dakota. I could go to work off the reservation, and I could raise my kids somewhere where I believe they will get a better education. But I chose to stay on Standing Rock, and I chose for my kids to go through those educational systems. And I believe if you empower youth, if you encourage youth, if you mentor youth, they will be successful. And I don't have a doubt in my mind that my kids will be successful.
Thank you again for being here and the privilege to be with you. So while we're on the topic of learning, I'm a leadership coach, and I'm always fascinated. How do leaders become the leaders they are? So that's my question to you. Besides your strong foundation, what's made you the leader that you are today?
I think if you just have, if you have a vision of what you'd like to see, so my vision is beyond my lifetime. So you have to be able to being in a leadership position, you have to make quick decisions. You have to make a decision fast. And you have to be confident in whatever decision you make. And the only way you're confident in what you're going to make is if you believe that it's going to reach the outcome. And my outcome that I'm hoping for is not in my lifetime. It took 200 years of takings that put us in this situation. I don't know if it's going to take 200 years to come out. It might take 50 years. It might take 100 years. I may not be around, but it's my job to try and take us in that direction where we're not in the situation that we are today. So I'm thinking for the next generation and the one after that. And if you could do that and make your decisions based on that, you can make fast decisions. And not everybody today will like them. Not everybody will like your decisions that you make. But that's okay as long as I know it's where I want, what I want for our future.
I'm looking for another question. Behind me? It's behind me. By the way, it's at least 5 degrees hotter where Chairman Archambault is standing than where you're sitting.
Wow. Sir, one of the things that was very concerning around Standing Rock was the lack of media coverage, and I was really grateful to Yes Magazine for their coverage of it. But that was, it was really difficult to find out what was going on. And one person I know who had a relative there had said that at one point the police collected the sacred objects and took them away, and then when they were forced to return them, they returned them in a dump truck and dumped them on the ground. Is that accurate?
First, I'll talk about media. So, what does media like? What does mainstream media like? Mainstream media likes negativity. They like confrontations. The mainstream media would be there if it was an all-out war. And we had a choice. What are we going to hope for? Are we going to fight this with war, or are we going to fight this with peace? There were different mediums for media. There are different tools, cell phones and social media. It's funny. I lived in Cannonball, and every year I would ride horse in that whole area, and I know that there was no cell coverage in that valley for years, and there was none then. But when we didn't have that, it was almost like the law enforcement scrambling. There was a camp that was set up. They called it the North Camp, and it was set up in the path of the pipeline on off Standing Rock and on the land that the oil company, the Energy Transfer Partners, the Dakota Access Pipeline bought. So they bought this land, even though it's against the law from North Dakota to buy land, they bought it. So the camp was set up in that path, and law enforcement came in and they removed everybody off there. And they removed whatever items were there, and they put them in dumpsters. Whether they were staffs or pipes or feathers, they put it all together and put it in there, and then they delivered it up the road to us.
Hi. If I was in your shoes, I'd be very angry. And anger can be a big handicap because it can draw your energy away. So how do you divert that angry energy?
You don't know that I'm not mad.
I have been impressed with the deep patience you display. And yet I'm also have a sense that you are deeply impatient with the present. And I'm wondering if you see patience and impatience as different things or different faces of the same thing.
I don't know. I think in the end, I think everyone's between the two questions asking how do I deal with it, whether it's patience or anger or impatient. The one thing that I have is prayer. So whether I'm patient or impatient, I always have to go back and I have to be honest, right before this, I get so nervous and scared to talk in front of people. I was in Alan's office and I was praying that things go right. Prayer has to be a part of everything. And that's where if somebody's displaying impatience or somebody's being angry, I wonder, it's just from my observation, how often do they pray and ask for forgiveness? One of the things that I saw at this camp was I have to learn how to forgive. Because if I don't forgive, what good does it do anybody around me if I'm angry and mad? At least I can let it go. If Alan socked me, for whatever reason, I could forgive him, and he might still be mad at me. I can't control that. But at least the people around me don't have to deal with. And it's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's really hard. It's not easy, but you just got to keep going and believe that things are the way they're supposed to be.
Chairman, I'd like to thank you for being obedient to your guide and to your God, for appearing before us tonight. I do understand a bit of what you speak of because I'm from South Louisiana, and I know what we have done to nature, if you will. But I'd like for each of us to take what we have learned from you tonight and at least share it with one person. If one person teaches one more person, we will not just travel around in ignorance, and our knowledge will lead to action. Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. We watched as much as we could find on the news about what was happening at Standing Rock, and I got most of my information from a few of my friends that happened to be there. And they didn't know each other, but they would give back reports on social media, and so we saw what was happening. What can we do now? I mean, those of us that are outside of the Native tribes, what can we do to help?
We're trying to do whatever we can to stop this pipeline still. And the one thing that we have is court. And I don't know if it's going to go our way or not. I never thought the judge would rule in our way in the first place. So now this remand is there, and the pipeline is in, and the oil is flowing, and we're taking precautions. You know, we're doing the things that at the tribal level. We want to get involved with the spill response plan. The Corps of Engineers and the Dakota Access Pipeline still exclude us from being a part of the spill response, yet their first plan they came out had everything coming onto Standing Rock. So we want to be part of that, but looking at our intake system and seeing what it is that we need to upgrade it in case there ever was a spill, so that it can filter whatever it is, or even doing deep well. So we're doing the things to make sure that our future is protected with this pipeline. But I think the one thing that's most important and that was most empowering was when the collective came together. And it's like, what can each and every one of us do so that more pipelines don't pop up? We could decrease our dependency on fossil fuels. As an individual, you might say, I'm going to reduce my footprint, but that ain't enough. There's more that we can do, and we can do it at the individual level, and we can do it at the community level, and this nation should be leading the world, but it's not. We should be the ones that are converting, but instead we're trying to revert back to an archaic industry. That's what you can do, is you can change your behavior.
Okay, I want to say a huge thank you to you, Chairman Archambault, to you, Dave. You know, you told us a powerful story, and it's your story and your people's story. But you've also spoken to us as a spiritual leader. You have touched our souls and our hearts tonight, and I want to thank you for that. That's a very precious gift that you've shared with us. Thank you.